Hello and welcome back to Sports Debates. And we have finally arrived at the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 59 this Sunday, and it's a rematch. The Evil Empire, the Chiefs looking for the three-peat, Eagles looking for their second ring, and avenging their 2022 team. So we're going to break down kind of every aspect of the team: offense, defense, coaching staffs, everything. See who has the advantage, compare them to their 2022 team. But first, I just want to see by show of your thumb, right, the thumb scale, how are you feeling right now on Thursday, 3 days away, about the Eagles' chances? Okay, yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's like the cautiously optimistic. All right, so just a recap of the NFC and AFC championships. The Chiefs defeated the Bills once again. Mahomes, 245 passing yards, 87.1 QB rating. The Eagles defeated the Commanders, blew out the Commanders, 55-23. An incredible offensive explosion. Hurts, 246 passing yards and a 72.3 QB rating. So not too far off from Mahomes' stat line. Saquon had 3 rushing touchdowns. One of the best games this team has ever played. Like we said, there's a rematch of Super Bowl 57 2 years ago. Chiefs defeated the Eagles 38-35. Chiefs clinched it on a field goal late in the fourth. That was a game where the Eagles had a 10-point lead at the half, then kind of fell apart. They were outscored 24-11 in the second. So we all remember that, and we're all fired up for some revenge here. So let's start with the two faces of the teams, the quarterbacks, right? Patrick Mahomes, he's in his fifth Super Bowl. He's thrown for over 1,000 combined yards in his 4 Super Bowls, 7 touchdowns. He's thrown over 250 passing yards in 3 of those games. The one game he did not was against the Eagles. That was technically his worst Super Bowl game. He's thrown for over 400 yards this postseason, no turnovers. Hurts has been the talking point of kind of all the quarterbacks. Last Super Bowl was his best game of his career. Over 300 combined yards, 3 rush touchdowns. He has 7 touchdowns this postseason, both rushing and throwing. And he hasn't thrown an interception since week 9. Dwayne, I'm going to start with you. Hurts and Mahomes, better or worse than in 2022? And who has the advantage in the Super Bowl?
I mean, I think both of them have gotten better. I don't think Mahomes has played as good as he has done before to get to where both of them gotten better. At the same time, who I think is better is very subject to what we're talking about. If we're talking about skill, if we're talking about pure passing, Mahomes. But we're talking about winning games, Jalen Hurts. I mean, for me, it's neck and neck, to be honest, because at the same time, you look at Patrick Mahomes, they're winning games, and he's doing what they need to win games. But if you're asking me about this year and how I feel, I would still say it's Mahomes.
Comparing them to 2022 is definitely fascinating. I mean, I guess Mahomes is worse, I guess, statistically, but not really, because he still is Mahomes. And I feel like when you reach the level of greatness that he has, you can't really get better in the way that we think about it. So statistically, he's probably worse. I'd say as a winning player and leader he's got to be better just because they're going for a three-peat and there's nothing to tell you that he's gotten worse in that regard. For Hertz, I guess sort of the same. I think if you compare Hertz last year to Hertz in 2022, most definitely worse. But from what we've seen from him this postseason in his ability to take care of the ball, I think that's where he was able to find form again in that area compared to last year. And the game that he had in this Commanders game was almost up there compared to his Super Bowl game 2 years ago. So I think that it's likely we could get a performance like we did 2 years ago to show that Hertz is just as good as he was then and probably better in other areas too.
I got to agree with you on that one. Jalen Hurts here compared to 2022 definitely got better with handling the ball and not, turning it over as much. Obviously, if you look at the stats, I'm pretty sure 2022 he probably had the better season because this season he didn't have to he didn't have to throw as much thanks to Saquon Barkley. So statistically, 2022 might be his best year. When you're looking between Mahomes versus Jalen Hurts this year, I got to give it to Mahomes, of course. He's done so much with so little. I mean, obviously you have Travis Kelce, but like he's up there in age, and I'm not sure how much longer Travis Kelce might be playing football, to be honest. I got to give it to Mahomes. I think he's going to have the better performance. I think he's a better quarterback, but that's not to put any shade on Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts just probably won't have to throw the ball as much because of the weapons that the offense has.
Yeah, this last game against the Commanders really got me fired up for Jalen Hurts. And as he quoted himself, that Sirianni let him out of the straitjacket a little bit. And I definitely saw that. He was throwing it, he was making good decisions. Still a couple of times he held it a little too long in the pocket, but you could see he was making adjustments throughout the game. That throw to AJ Brown on 4th and 5 was a beauty. The one play that really stood out to me right away was the first play of the game, right? And you kind of saw him being that field captain, game commander sort of thing. So you can see him step out of the pocket and see the defense, calls Saquon over on the audible, and changes the play. I don't know what the original play was, but he changes that play, and Saquon ends up running 70 yards to the house. So that play right there showed me, and that's something that Hurts has done all year. You can see he really has a good view of the defense and knows the game better than anyone on that field. And to be able to have a quarterback that you can trust to make those changes in the heat of the game, that's a really important attribute that not every quarterback has as well as Hurts does. I'm very excited for this matchup. I think Hurts, he's ready for it. As we saw, like best game of his career. Mahomes won with like under 200 passing yards that day. So obviously it doesn't come down to the quarterback as we learned. I do think, again, Hurts is going to have the better game. May not come down to Eagles winning because of it. Mahomes is the better quarterback.
Not only do you have to give a shout out to Hurts on that, but I think you also have to do it to the offensive coach who was calling the plays, because you would see him go to the line, read the defense, then you would hear him say reload, 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 which just means go back to the first play, and then you would see how effective that first play was after he changed it and then went back to it. So I got to give it to our offensive coach there to actually pick a good plays, unlike somebody last year.
So let's go to the overall offense, the weapons that these two are working with. The Chiefs' offense has been pretty good this postseason, kind of better than their regular season. The regular season, they're kind of middle of the pack ranking wise, points per game, passing yards, rush yards. They've averaged 27.5 points per game this postseason, 197 in the air, 92 on the ground. Meanwhile, the Eagles have been the best offense in terms of points per game and rush yards this postseason. They're dead last in passing yards, however. They were 29th in passing yards per game in the regular season, while they were the top 10 in points per game and rush yards. So we know the story. Eagles, Saquon Barkley, their main guy, but they've got Brown, they've got Smith, they've got Goddard, who actually combined for 256 receiving yards in the last Super Bowl. Meanwhile, the Chiefs, they've got Pacheco, they've got an abundance of wide receivers. Looking at these two offenses, how do they shape up against each other, and how do they compare to when we last saw them face off?
Honestly, between the Eagles and the Chiefs this year, obviously, I think you have to give it to the Eagles with that, just star-studded offense with A.J. Brown, Saquon Barkley, and Jalen Hurts. And though the Chiefs do have two elite weapons in Mahomes and Travis Kelce, it ain't enough for me to get the Chiefs an advantage over between the two. Now, obviously, I'm just talking about offensive weapons here, but I have to give love to the big men who are offensive line, who really make using the weapons possible due to the protection of the quarterback and also opening running lanes. And if we're comparing these two teams from 2022, I think 2022 Chiefs are better than what they are now due to a younger Travis Kelce, because this season we've seen Travis Kelce who hasn't looked as good, and most of the season between Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes, you haven't seen the connection that you usually do. They looked off for most of the game. Travis Kelce wasn't getting that many targets, and that really hurt the offense. And if you go back to the Eagles 2022, I think we're better than we are now thanks to Saquon Barkley's addition.
Yeah, if you want to talk offensive weapons, I think the Eagles have it in probably every position. Offensive line, honestly, tight end. Goddard's been playing better than Kelce. Kelce looks, kind of washed at this point. Receivers, obviously. Saquon, obviously. But the one position they don't have, the advantage is quarterback. And so I think, the offense we might have on paper the advantage going into this game, but I think the reason that the Chiefs might win is because of Mahomes and how he elevates their offense. We'll get into the coaching later, but I think that Mahomes and this Chiefs offense plays in a way that really does take advantage of the Eagles' bend don't break offense. A lot of check downs, like one of the best efficient short yardage teams. And so I think their offense in a way will be humming at full capacity. On paper, the Eagles have the advantage and their offense might even play better, but I think it comes down to Mahomes and his ability to elevate the Chiefs offense.
Obviously, the Eagles have a better offense, and yeah, the only position I would say that the Eagles are not really better than the Chiefs are in that quarterback position because of how we play. I think like the freedom in which we play, where we can run the ball easily and we can pass the ball easily. I feel like that freedom is not necessarily what the Chiefs have. Not that Chiefs can't run the ball, but not at the same caliber as we can. That allows that freedom of like, okay, Jalen Hurts can have a good game. Okay, Saquon can have a good game. Like it allows that freedom in that regard where when it comes to the Chiefs, you kind of rely on Patrick Mahomes having a great game.
So I went back and I watched the highlights of the Super Bowl 2 years ago. And the biggest thing that I noticed was our running backs, right? Boston Scott, Kenny Gainwell, and Miles Sanders was our running back trio. They had 45 combined rush yards. I think it's safe to say Barkley's going to give us more than 45 rush yards, right? Hurts had 70 that game. He had to do a bulk of the running. Like, we tried to run it in that game. And he didn't get any. I think the longest rush by the three of them was 9 yards. I think our throwing game was better then because that's really what our offense was. Now we have a running game on top of that same receiving trio that played so well 2 years ago. So that's the biggest upgrade that we have compared to 2022. And I do think that says a lot. And we'll talk about the Chiefs defense in just a sec. They have a pretty good rush defense. But Barkley's not your average running back. And just what he's brought to this offense that was already really great and it has been for the last 3 years. It's a big difference. So on to those defensive teams. Chiefs defense and the Eagles defense, they're both top 10 in the league in terms of points per game. Chiefs have been pretty good this postseason. They were the fourth best defense in the regular season in terms of points allowed per game. Their pass defense wasn't great, 18th in the league, but their rush defense was top 10 at 8th. The Eagles, a little more explosive of a defense, second best defense in terms of points per game, first in pass defense, 10th in rush defense. They've allowed the second fewest points in this postseason. Looking at these two, Aiden, how do they shape up against each other and how do they compare to 2022?
I think that the Chiefs defense has really taken a step up. I think they do this every year, to be honest. Every year they get better, game by game, month by month. And when they get to the playoffs, they are a really good unit. Their defensive coordinator, he has 4 rings. He might be the greatest coordinator of all time. He could be a head coach if he wanted. Now, I will say, Eagles defense, I think, has a significant advantage in the middle of the defensive line. The Chiefs' interior offensive line is not the best. They have a couple players that I think Jalen Carter, Milton Williams, Jordan Davis can all take advantage of. And you might see Mahomes get sacked a good amount. But I think as far as scheme goes, Vic Fangio's defenses have struggled against Mahomes. I think he's 0-8 or 0-10 against Mahomes, which is not good. It's a little misleading because he was on the Broncos and the Dolphins, and the offenses on his teams were averaging like 13 points a game. So we didn't have a lot of help. I think Mahomes versus Fangio is a really interesting matchup. I think the Eagles defense is better overall, just with the talent that they have. But I think coaching, given what Fangio's done against Mahomes and what Spagnuolo's done in the playoffs for the Chiefs, I think scheme and coaching wise, I'd have to go for the Chiefs.
In comparison to 2 years ago, I think both teams' defense has here to here. I mean, in my personal opinion, I really just think that they are significantly better. Now, to compare defenses, when we look at both their defenses, they're quite good. Chiefs aren't necessarily as high up in ranking, but they're still pretty doggone good. To sit here and act like, oh, Eagles are just so significantly better. No, I would say they are better by a medium amount. I can say, okay, yes, Eagles are a better defensive, have a better defensive team, but let's not like take it easy when it comes to Eagles offense. Like, oh yeah, it's just the Chiefs. Like, no, we cannot do that. They will make us pay if we think it's just going to be a walk in the park. So, I mean, obviously, I believe that the Eagles have a better defense, but we should not sleep on the Chiefs' defense at all.
Obviously, the Eagles' defense is a lot more star-studded with players like Jordan Davis, Darius Slay, and all these other names I can go on and on about because everybody on the Eagles' defense is a dog. But and the Chiefs do still have players like that with Chris Jones and like Trent McDuffie, players like that. However, the Eagles obviously player-wise are a lot better. But then this is where it comes in with Steve Spagnuolo versus Vic Fangio. And as Aiden was saying, I think it's going to be a very interesting matchup. And though the Chiefs defense isn't better player wise, the mastermind that is Steve Spagnuolo when it comes to defense, I I'm worried. Obviously, I should be worried. When you're going against somebody as smart as that on the defense, I'm worried. However, I will give it to the Eagles because the plan doesn't always work because the players lack the ability to complete the plan. So I'm going to go with the Eagles is better defensively.
The biggest stat I've seen thrown around for the Chiefs matchup against the Eagles offense is that the Chiefs haven't allowed a 100-yard rusher this year by any running back. So they've held running backs fairly well. Now, Cook for the Bills did just have 86 yards, so almost 100. That was probably the most they allowed. He had 2 touchdowns. If James Cook can kind of break through that defense a little bit, then Saquon Barkley can. So maybe they're just tired after a long season. Bills found some holes, whatever it is. That makes me feel a little bit better, even though they have had a really good rush defense. As for the Eagles, one of the biggest things that I noticed from 2022, first of all, we didn't sack Mahomes once. Now, I know there were some turf issues, which played into it. And that was a defensive line that was big on sacks. I think they had like the most sacks by like an Eagles defensive line or something like that. If they weren't getting any sacks, that's something. But I feel like this defensive line is for some reason, even though the last one was like historically better. Also, our secondary, the Chiefs had 3 passing touchdowns. One to Kelsey, one to Kadarius Toney, and one to Sky Moore. The ones to Toney and Moore were the 2 most wide open touchdown passes you'll ever see. Both times because Avonte Maddox and CJ Gardner Johnson just read it terribly and like ran in the complete opposite direction. The Kelsey one was just because he was guarded by Marcus Epps and just absolutely cooked them. I like our secondary much better this year. I know we still have a few of those guys, but they're kind of down in the pecking order. And now you've got Mitchell, Slay was in that game, and you've got Cooper DeJean. So I like the secondary much better. And the Chiefs don't have that scary of a receiving game, but they have a lot of guys that they use well in the motions and stuff. So that's one of the main things that I noticed. I also noticed that their run game is primarily to the left side. Apparently, Pacheco attacked the left side a lot. We've got Zach Bond over there now. So a couple of big differences from last time. Both times the Eagles had really good defenses, and it really just ended up being an offensive heavy game. But I think as long as we don't have any turf problems, I think we'll be a little better. All right, let's get on to the coaching staff. So it's Andy Reid and Nick Sirianni. Reid's been here a million times. It's his 5th Super Bowl. He's got 3 wins. Meanwhile, Sirianni just once, but he's seen it now. And you can tell he has definitely matured since then. And you've got the coordinators we've talked about. We've talked about Spagnuolo, Vic Fangio, right? I'm blanking on the offensive coordinator's name. Someone help me.
Kellen Moore for
Kellen
us.
Moore. I know. Yeah, Kellen Moore. I do not know the Chiefs' offensive coordinator. So you've got this coaching staff. Overall, who do you like better? And at least the Eagles, much different than 2022. How did they compare?
Well, obviously, the head coaching, I don't think is a question. I think we're all going to go with Andy Reid here when it comes to the two head coaches. Obviously, thank you, Nick Sirianni. You're like 10-2 after you shaved your head. Really appreciate it. But you're going against Andy Reid, who's who's been around the block a couple of times with this team in the Super Bowl. Then you have Vic Fangio, who's a defensive mastermind, like I said, been around the league for a while as well. I think at one time, one about his 4 years with the Dolphins, he was third overall in scoring defense. And this year, he's obviously had a great defensive year with us. Though we struggled in the beginning of the year with our run defense, we quickly shut that down and got that fixed. Thank God. Then you have Kellen Moore, and obviously you have the Chiefs' offensive coach, who is Matt Nagy. Matt Nagy, though obviously he's working with a lot less here, he still has been really great with the Chiefs through this tenure there, and he's helped Mahomes become the quarterback that he's been, even though he hasn't had the same exact materials that he's worked with the players. So I got to go. Head coach goes to the Chiefs. Defensive coach is probably a split. Offensive coach, I'm going to have to go Kellen Moore.
Just took the words right out of my mouth. But I think coaching overall just goes to the Chiefs. I just feel like they've been here before. They've done that. It's no shock to anybody on the Eagles. If we were given the same experience, I would hope so. Just because of how experienced this coaching staff it's just got to go to the Chiefs 100%.
I'm actually going to pose a question for you guys. So I think I mentioned how Mahomes and their offense would really seemingly take advantage of the bend don't break system that Fangio is going to run, right? And if you think about like past defenses, great teams like the Patriots, I think the consensus on them was that their defense can play however they need to. They're not like living and dying by one kind of system. And I think the Eagles, you might wonder, should the Eagles defense try to just continue to play their style of, we're going to not allow big plays, chunk yardages, but we'll allow check downs and shorter plays, and hopefully the other team will make a mistake. Now they have Mahomes, and they're not probably going to make a mistake. But do you guys think that the Eagles should go into this game with slightly different of an approach, maybe be more aggressive than they're going to expect, or do you think they should stay with their system that has worked so well all season?
I think we should keep the same defense that we had. Obviously, you can be a little more aggressive, but it's Patrick Mahomes. He reads the defense perfectly fine. He has the weapons to adjust to it. And I really don't think being aggressive is really going to help. I feel like it'll hurt us more than anything. And using the bend don't break, with, like you said, with the checkdowns, I feel like Mahomes won't make a mistake, but there are players on that team that will. And there are players on our team that will make the plays that we need. As you saw, Reed Blankenship got a fumble last game. He forced the ball out a couple times. We've been really good at doing that now. And I feel like doing this bend don't break has really showed us that we can knock the ball loose a lot when they're doing these checkdowns and trying to get extra yards. We don't allow that anymore. And I feel like the bend don't break is something that we've kind of mastered. And I feel like it's really our secret weapon that everybody knows about. So it's not very secret.
I feel like we need to stay consistent to who we are. I feel like they want us to kind of step out of our zone when it comes to that. They're just like, okay, if we make them step out their zone and now they're a little uncomfortable, we can bank on that. And that's how smart that coaching staff is. Like they're playing mind game. So I feel like if we just stay consistent who we are, we'll have to bank on somebody else making the mistake.
Yeah, that's a good point about them wanting to bring us out of our comfort zone because I think that, their coaching staff's been here before. I'm sorry, head coach has, but they know what they want out of us, and I think their offense does do a lot of kind of short little passes and kind of move up the field short way. So they're not too much of an explosive offense where you're going to see like you'll see a deep pass from Mahomes, but they don't rely on that. They'll kind of just plow through the field. So I think, yeah, I 100% agree with you, Dwayne, and Emmanuel staying consistent who we are because that's what wins championships, and it's that mental game of wanting to throw the other team off, make them uncomfortable.
I probably would go a little more in the middle, where I think they should throw out a variety of different looks. If you think about the Chiefs' weapons, while Xavier Worthy is fast, he's not necessarily like a down the field deep ball threat. And so I think the Eagles have the potential to still give up a big play playing their defense. I think if you remember last game, Terry McLaurin had a long touchdown, mainly yards after the catch, right? And I think they're gonna get Worthy in spots like that where he can still break us open, even if we're playing that sort of style. And while I think the Eagles will get one turnover, just because that's how good they are and that's how they've been playing, I think largely the Chiefs are going to come into this game with that in mind. Like, protect the ball. We know how these guys play. We're not going to give the ball over easily. And so I think in order for them to give the Chiefs offense trouble, they need to at least throw out different looks here and there, potentially blitz more than they normally would, or play man, honestly. I think I trust our corners to play man. So I wouldn't say like just do the only thing and don't change anything. I would say throw different looks, but for the most part, stay with your scheme.
Yeah, I agree with all the earlier points about obviously Andy Reid has the big advantage there, and I do take Spagnuolo over Vic Fangio, and I think again, he's been here a million times. He knows exactly what he wants to do. I really liked our offensive play calling last game. I think we had some of the best drives we've seen out of the Eagles all year. That 4th and 5 call, that was a game changer, especially that situation in the game. We were up by 2. They could have gotten one last drive, the Commanders, and taken a lead or tied it or something right before the half. You convert that in a beautiful throw, end up scoring. You got a bigger lead at halftime. That was huge. I think there was one drive we had where we didn't even give it to Barkley and you scored a touchdown. And I just thought the throws were really good. I think I texted everyone. I was like, that was the best drive we've seen all year. And we didn't even give it to Barkley. So that for me tells me a lot. And I've seen a lot of maturity from 2022, but then also early this year, the 2-2 start, lots of questions about Sirianni, but his ability to kind of rally the troops together, you know, and turn the team around. I think they've learned from last year. I think one of the things Lane Johnson said was they weren't expecting that long of the halftime. Like that threw them off a lot in 2022. So now they know what to expect. Sirianni knows what to expect. He's wiser. Hurts is wiser. So I think offensively, the play calling and the coaching, I like the advantage there. Now let's talk about what's actually going to happen. We're going to give our predictions, but first, actually, let's do it all at once. Give me your score prediction and give me a player that makes the big play. That's kind of the highlight of every Super Bowl. There's that big play, defensively, offensively, what happens. So your final score prediction and who makes the big play. Emmanuel, start with you.
I think I'm gonna go with a sort of low scoring game. I'm gonna go 21-28 maybe. I think that's how I go. Chiefs favor, or sorry, not Chiefs favor. Eagles favor. Now I'm not betraying my team this time. And I think the big play or X factor is going to be Xavier Worthy, mostly because of Travis Kelce is a huge problem for us because he's a tight end that can really catch, and he's a lot bigger than all of our corners, safety, and everything else. And I have noticed something earlier, which though this isn't an original take, I'm taking it from ESPN or First Take because they was talking about it. The Eagles and the Chiefs. The Chiefs are experts. It's their bread and butter to get yards after the catch, and the Eagles are a great team at shutting it down. So I think because we're going to focus so much on Travis Kelce and shutting him down, it's going to allow Xavier Worthy to open up the passing game and try to get those runs or run after yards, which you saw last or 2 weeks ago when the Chiefs played, where he would catch it, it would be a check down, but he's so fast and shifty that he would just blitz by them and get those extra 5 or 3 yards to pick up first or make it a lot closer.
This is gonna be a rough one, but scoring prediction is gonna be 35-21. I have Brandon Graham, who is coming back, as going to be a breakout player. The second he does something good, is the second that we gain all of our confidence. The split second, even if he doesn't even get a sack, but let's say he just makes a great play on the ball. I promise you that's going to offense and defense is going to shoot us up. And that's where I think that scoring is going to come from. I feel like he's going to get a good sack that's going to get us really close to the goal line where they got to punt it and we can get that extra score. And I feel like I'm very confident in not only our line, but in him specifically to do that because he's that guy. I mean, when we need it, he's done it.
I'll take one for the team here. So we're not all in agreement because I feel like for whatever reason this episode I've been the Chiefs glazer, which I'm fine to take one for the team here. I will say 31-28 Chiefs. Kind of I feel like it's weirdly going to be a similar game to 2 years ago. Um, while I can see a defensive like low scoring game like Emmanuel said, I think for whatever reason the offenses will prevail. As for a breakout player, I like Devonte Smith a lot in this matchup. He's going up against Shamari Connor, who's the Chiefs' second corner essentially, and he is only ranked 62nd on PFF versus McDuffie's like the third best corner. So I think AJ Brown will have a much tougher matchup, and I think Smitty's going to have a lot of opportunities. Maybe not necessarily like a huge breakout play, but I think he's going to have a really big game. Yeah, I'm really hoping, I'm excited for this game, like genuinely. So excited to watch this game. And it's not, as Philadelphia fans, like we've reached the point with the Sixers where we don't really look forward to them because of the misery. And the Phillies are approaching that territory, just how much agony. And so with the Eagles, like we got our Super Bowl 7 years ago, and we're consistently good. And so I can look forward to this game. And if they lose, I'll be pissed, but I'm not gonna like be depressed the way I would be with the Sixers. So I'm excited.
I'm going for another offensive heavy game, 35-32. It'll be another three-score game when it's all said and done. My big play X factor comes from a dream I had like 3 weeks ago where I saw this play happening. And Cooper DeJean makes an interception to kill a Chiefs drive at the end, give us the ball, and seal the win. So if it happens, wow. Let's hope I didn't just jinx it by saying but I need it out there so I can say I dreamed it before it happens.
I can throw in another dream prediction. I had one a few nights ago, and it was a bad one. I think for whatever reason, Saquon had 2 carries for -2 yards, and um, and the Eagles were down 2 scores with the
Oh,
ball, and I don't remember what happened after that, but there's a
terrible.
an anti-dream to hopefully not jinx it for you.
Ready to use as much black magic as we can to beat the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Um, Super Bowl 59 is coming up. It's been a fun time previewing and predicting all these. I will drop an update on the scoring system for the predictions and who wins. I'm cooking up a point system for that. So
Okay.
we'll see who wins overall. Other than that, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.